The studio lights had barely warmed up when chaos erupted. The moment the cameras switched on, the world witnessed something they had never seen before. Tim Walz's face tightened, his jaw stiff, and his eyes filled with the kind of anger that even trained politicians struggle to hide. And it all began because Joe Rogan leaned forward, looked straight into the lens, and said the one line that exploded across the internet like wildfire. "Tim, the truth always finds its way out, even when someone tries to bury it." Greg Gutfeld smirked. The entire room froze. Millions watching from home stopped scrolling. And within seconds, social media thundered with shock, disbelief, and curiosity. What truth? Whose truth? And why did Tim Walz look like he was moments away from breaking? As the crowd held its breath, Joe Rogan continued. "People trusted you. They believed in you. But what you did behind the scenes, that's what we're here to talk about." Tim Walz's hands tightened around the edge of the desk. The anger wasn't just visible, it was trembling, alive. He opened his mouth to rebut, but Greg jumped in before he could speak. "Let's not pretend anymore," Greg said, voice sharp, eyes steady. "Tonight, everything comes out. No filters, no political script, just truth." And just like that, the room became a battlefield, words as bullets, silence as smoke, and the truth as a bomb waiting to explode. For months, tensions had been rising. People whispered, questioned, doubted. Tim Walz had built his public image on promises of leadership, empathy, and fairness, but behind closed doors, a different story was unfolding. A story of ignored warnings, broken systems, and decisions that had quietly hurt thousands. And the people closest to him had begun stepping forward, telling their stories, stories that Joe Rogan and Greg Gutfeld had been investigating for weeks. Joe took a deep breath and unfolded a small paper. "This," he said, "is from someone who trusted you with their future, and felt betrayed." The words struck the room like lightning. The letter spoke of delayed action, overlooked suffering, and failures that could no longer be hidden beneath speeches and smiles. Tim Walz exploded. "You don't understand the pressure," he shouted, but Greg cut him off again. "We understand perfectly," he said. "Pressure doesn't excuse negligence. Leadership is tested in the darkest moments, not the easy ones." The audience murmured. Some nodded. Some stared at Walz with widening eyes. And some, for the first time, wondered if the person they had once admired had actually let them down. But the moment that lit the world on fire came next. A single young woman from the audience stood up, trembling but determined. Her voice cracked as she spoke. "My brother needed help," she said. "He trusted the system you promised would protect him. He never got it. And now he's gone." The room fell silent. Tim Walz froze. Joe lowered his head. Greg clenched his jaw. Her grief washed over everyone like a tidal wave. Her courage, standing up there, it was something raw, real, unforgettable. Joe Rogan gently asked her, "If you could say one thing to the leaders who failed you, what would it be?" She wiped her tears. "Stop running from the truth," she whispered. "Face it, fix it, and don't let anyone else suffer the way we did." Even Greg Gutfeld, usually sharp-tongued and relentless, grew quiet. Tim Walz tried to speak, but whatever he said felt too small, too late, swallowed by the weight of stories that could no longer be ignored. And for the first time, he wasn't furious at Rogan or Gutfeld, he was furious at himself. Furious at the choices he didn't make. Furious at the time he couldn't rewind. The show wrapped up with heavy hearts, but one message stood out, one that would echo across social media for days. Joe Rogan looked directly into the camera and said, "Leaders aren't defined by how loud they speak, but by how deeply they listen." People shared the clip everywhere. They argued, they debated, but most importantly, they reflected. As the young woman walked out of the studio, Greg gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "Your courage," he said softly, "will change more lives than you know." She smiled through her tears, and for the first time in months, she felt hope. Because sometimes, truth doesn't destroy, it rebuilds. Sometimes, exposure isn't humiliation, it's transformation. And sometimes, the greatest failures don't end a story, they begin a powerful new chapter. The episode went viral overnight. People commented, shared, debated, and subscribed in record numbers. Not because of drama, but because of truth. Because people crave honesty. They crave accountability. They crave stories that remind them that courage still exists in the world. And the message that echoed the loudest was simple: stand for truth. Even when it shakes the world.